Do you like conversation on a variety of topics? Feel like no one wants to talk about the things that interest you? Tired of only hearing the same political, sports, or catastrophe talk? Yeah, we feel that way too. Join two high-functioning geeks as they discuss just about anything under the sun. We can't tell you what we'll be talking about each week because we don't know where our brains will take us. It will be an interesting conversation though, so hang on and join us. Here comes the relentless geekery. There we go. How is Alan today besides wet?
And actually it's so first of all, the big sad news is, I should tomorrow and actually already today be at the Men's annual gathering.
Yeah.
I've been anticipating being at that for a year. It was shaping up wonderfully. We had a really great committee this year, and people were they gathered tons of programs from members and non-members. So we had that's my favorite part of the thing, is just all these 1 hour immersions into something someone is an expert in, that they're passionate about. You just get so much a cornucopia of like, wow, I didn't know that I wanted to know more about Herculaneum, you know what I mean? The other city besides Pompeii that got buried, or whatever else it might be.
Right.
Great special events this year. We had our gala dinner speaker was Shetterly, who's the woman that wrote the book Hidden Figures. I think we talked about this before. Yep. As well as a talent show, a comedy show, a drag brunch, a cryptic crawl, just so much cool stuff going on. And today, the annual gathering actually runs Wednesday to Sunday. Today would have been the colloquium. And I don't know if we talked about this that much before. The colloquium is a really cool event that Mensa puts on, where it's deep immersion into a single topic. And it's the stereotype of what people think we do at Mensa conferences.
Right.
This one was giftedness through the lifeline. And so, talking about, many people have questions about gifted children. How do I know? How do I, the care and feeding of them if I have them and stuff like that? But also, Mensans are very aware, we are our own support group. That doesn't turn off when you get to be a teen or a 20-something in the workforce, or a mature adult with kids and stuff like that. There's still things that are different about Smarties that you have to kind of be aware of. What kind of smarts do you have? Are you the curious type? Are you the deep silo knowledge type? Do you have, as we've laughed about, some traces of Asperger's, or things where you're the stereotype of the geek, the nerd, is that we're poorly socialized, and that's of course only a stereotype, but for some people they fill the stereotype quite well. So and it's not only you have great speakers from outside, like the professors, the authors, the people that really know about that topic. And then you have good Q&As after each of their presentations. And then often there's a big panel discussion at the end where, and anybody who was at the colloquium, really want to be there. They're interested in the topic. And you and I have laughed about this. We were just at a Comic-Con, for instance, and I could start writing out what questions are going to be asked, because they're so boringly typical.
Yes,
gosh, what's your favorite sandwich, and what was it like meeting Bruce Campbell, and whatever else it might be. And instead here, there's really a lot of times Mensans know a lot. They know, if not as much as all the experts in the room, they're expert in that field as well. And so their questions are penetrating.
Yeah, or at least there's a lot of knowledge, a little bit of basic knowledge on lots of topics that help you form a, like you said, deeper question, a question that's not just, well, how many parents do you know? It's something very specific with more connotations to it quite often.
Yeah, and the discussions, just while you're seated in the audience, seated around tables for lunch, just kind of standing around, it's just at a wonderful higher level. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of friendship and quippery and stuff like that, but it's also, if you're really there to learn something, it's very cool to hear not only people's personal experiences of things, which is kind of like witnessing, but that's the lowest form of knowledge transfer. So does everybody think and feel this way? How do you get to statistical significance? How do you get to something that you could use to predict the future, or at least be able to say, oh, we recognize these 4 factors, and so probably you're type X, and therefore a good solution to why you're not fitting in might be this. or what career you should
Right.
pursue, or what you should do with your retirement, or whatever else it might be.
And
So,
I'm not to cut you off, keep going, but as a aside to that, this isn't the elitist, like, oh, well, now we're around smart people, we can talk smart, and it's none of that. It's really want to learn things, really enjoy that. That's how our brains are wired. I was at fireworks last night watching some guys throw a football, and I'm like, damn, I can't even throw a football half as close as that. My point is, they had no problem showing off their skills and athleticism in front of people, and there was no big deal. But sometimes when you get your brain and you're talking on a level that most people are like, what are you talking about? They think it's elitist in that. So the colloquium and the AG is in a place where everybody's like that. You can really, not for us, but other people, let your hair down and, enjoy that.
true. That's one of the most common things about Mensa in general, but these gatherings is specific, is everybody gets your jokes. You don't have to slow down your conversation, use a lesser vocabulary. And put it this way, that might sound a little bit complaining, but it's real. I really take the bridles off when I am with my Mensa friends, because
Yes.
like I speak relatively quickly all the time. When I do a presentation, I must give 2 hours worth of material in an hour, because I just
Well,
start.
no, 45 minutes, because you got to have 15 minutes of questions.
There is a passing period and an AV setup time. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, but um, I have friends I've made, over the course of the years that I don't live near them, but when you see them at the AG every year, you just get a wonderful, like, so how's life? And in 5 minutes, you really get to hear, wow, they're not just, oh, I'm getting by. It's more like, hey, I just decided to take on archaeology in Montana because
Yes.
you know what I mean? There's all kinds of dabblings, but the dabblings are not like typical. They're interesting. They talk about where they've traveled, and the travel is not, I went to every pub, which is kind of cool, but it's not, instead it's, I'm studying illuminated manuscripts. You know what I mean? That they kind of go through, here's where the biggest stores of them are in Europe, and where do we get a lot of our medieval knowledge, because some books survived, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
since in the 1400s or 1600s or whatever else it might be.
It's not that they went and visited all the pubs in their town. It's that they read about a building historically that was the original pub that so-and-so stayed at, and they're helping restore it by researching the type of wallpaper that was, that's
Exactly.
the difference in how the brains
That's
are
right.
wired.
This was Richard the Lionhearted's favorite pub.
Yeah, and what we find
I mean?
enjoyable and fun, because you say stuff like that, sometimes you get people like, why are you doing that? Because it's a load of fun. No, it's just how people,
it's
different.
It's a slight differentiator. Exactly.
Yes.
So, and of course, a number of people are not only just flying, and some people are doing cross-country travel. And so you get to, like, here's the cool places that they're stopping at. They don't just, we found a motel, and it happens to be near where Louis L'Amour wrote his books, or whatever else it might be. I really love that stimulation. And, people talk about, after any kind of convention, when you're with your tribe, there's often that big, like, Monday letdown where you're like, oh, back to the mundane world.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now I get to deal with, tax consequences and stuff like that. Right. So the reason I'm not going this year is because, we got the conservatorship hearing for my mom, and it's on 7/8. It's right in the heart of the gathering. And of course, it's not within drivable distance of Reno/Sparks, Nevada. Right. And so I just, after looking forward to something for a year and then having it kind of like pulled out from under, and I have misgivings about this. I really want to be at the hearing. It really might be that it could be virtual, or that really what we care about is the results of the hearing. But this is a significant event in our lives. I really want to be there to see the process. And I've not been called as a witness or anything like that, but kind of, don't you want to know the rigor that goes into they're giving a human being's life over into somebody else's hands, financial and medical power of attorney, if you will. And I kind of just, boy, do I need reinforcement that our systems work nowadays. There's so many ways in which things are being frayed and undermined and abandoned that are importantly traditional and useful. And I don't want to think, one of the things that I have appreciated about the Brookdale facility where Mom is that it really seems to be rigorous in terms of, it's not a scam, and they don't let scammers approach people there. It's a very safe place. And every other thing, boy, upon my father's death, we started to get all kinds of stuff in the mail that are the usual kind of vultures circling.
Yeah.
When I go there and I processed the mail, they were good charitable givers to nature causes and veterans causes and whatever else it might be. But there's also all these other kind of scammy stuff, and like it's a stereotype in the, again, I'm trying to overusing that word. It's a tradition here in the United States that people think that as you get older and you're, I don't know, a little less mentally there, a little more trusting, that people swoop in and try to be like, hey, oh well,
Right.
I just want to make sure there's, I don't know, all kinds of, like, my mom and dad were really good to me and I want to be as good to them as I can be. And so it's important to be there. It's important to be part of this process. And just like Colleen and I laugh about this all the time. Wow, we got 2 things going on in September on the exact same damn night. Why is that? Why do we have to make trade-offs and give-ups instead of, couldn't we have coordinated this somehow? So, and I've been realizing lately how much this has been wearing me down. You know what I mean? It's difficult to be out in the house where I'm packing things up, and so I'm saying goodbye to my parents' life, if you will, and I'm handling their affairs, and my brothers are also participating, but I'm doing, I think, the most of it because I've done the most visits, if you will, and it's just weird how much I'm more emotional than usual. I'm more down than usual because death ain't any fun. My mom having Alzheimer's ain't any fun. It's hard to face these things of, this could go on for a while. And I don't know. So I was really looking forward to this little gathering as a relief, because you really can just put the world outside the doors for a while. You know what I mean? Just play games and go to silly programs and cheer on the Mr. Mensa contestant and whatever else it might be. And Colleen and I are not getting a chance to do that.
Yeah.
And I kind of said, I need to be at this hearing. You don't. Colleen, do you want to go? Well, we've enjoyed these things together, so she doesn't want to go by herself. But then it's like, well, what a sad sacrifice for the both of us. I was going to do a talk on comic books, comic book geography in the multiverse, you know what I mean? Geekery personified, epitomized. Colleen was going to run the Carnelli tournament, which is a cool, like, word association game that Mensons play. And now even those little bits of things we love doing with our friends, things that are highlights of past gatherings, whoop, rug pulled out from under. So I just
yeah, totally. Well, with your parents, from what we've talked about, you have good memories. You had a good time, and you have, so there's no words that are going to be that consoling, but there's a lot of people that don't have that, and a lot of people that don't have good memories. So you've got that. No, not that you don't have regrets, but everything's not a regret, and you and your brothers aren't fighting. You're not arguing about this, that, and the other thing. So
exactly that. There's very little family drama going on.
Right.
You can tell that people under pressure, they get a little testy and stuff like that. But there's no like, wow, I'm the black sheep of the family, returned to steal the family fortune. There's none of that crap.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I could go on about our family when my grandmother died and stuff. Not even worth it. But and the AG, I haven't been to one for a couple years. I mean, almost 5 years I haven't been to an AG. So I'd really love to get back to one. And I'd love to, sit in on talks and do a talk or two, maybe try and get our podcast a live one of it or something.
Honestly, that if we end up going next year at Baltimore, it's closer.
It's
right. Driving distance,
yes.
Flying, and it's, I would love to do that. Us doing a good live relentless geekery. We'd have a great crowd.
And we'd probably be in trouble
at the height of our powers. You know what I mean? It would be a great time. Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things that's worth pointing out about Mensa, they have this tradition over the 4th of July weekend, but instead of going up to like, oh, how about Canada? How about Minnesota? No, we go to Phoenix and Sparks, Nevada. It's in a desert. You know what I mean? Like, luckily, someone pointed out this is the high desert instead of the low desert, whereas Phoenix is getting like 110 degrees, and for an extended period of time, this is only going to break into the 90s regularly, and 50s at night. Deserts are weird like that in terms of there's a huge temperature swing because the usual things that like
Right.
absorb and give off heat. It's a different climb there,
Right.
and so I don't know. The gathering had been in Reno 10 years ago. So we already kind of had a chance to explore Reno and Carson City and Lake Tahoe and stuff like that. And this was going to be at a resort hotel that, for all I know, we really wouldn't have left it. We just would have taken root in this hotel. It's like 90 degrees out there, air conditioned in here. I think I'll go play another game, you know, but I love doing that. I love exploring. Where's the best barbecue? Where's the cool little history museum about the railroad that went through, or whatever else it might be. They did a great job with tours this year. They had everything of interest in Reno/Sparks. They had a thing, you know, let's go to see some wild Mustangs, and let's go to the Mustang Ranch. And that's not the ranch where they keep the Mustangs. That's a brothel.
Yes.
I think I might have mentioned that before.
Yeah, we were talking about that because it's like, you know, you can tell this is the Menson group because they're asking all these questions about, well, how do you get paid? And what do you like import beds? How long do you keep the mattresses? What sheets are you using? You know, it's just like
details. Exactly.
Yeah, it's not the questions normally asked. Probably all and what I mean, the funny thing is you'd probably run into somebody that's Menson level and like answers all this, and it's like that, you know, just the other way would probably be totally shocking.
And you know, like being a worker at a brothel is not the same as being like in the porn industry. But like if you remember, Asia Carrera is actually a Menson. I think there's a couple people in the porn industry that are Mensa qualified. You know, I don't know. It's kind of cool. We're everywhere. You know
yeah.
I mean? There's truck drivers to presidents. There's you know, porn workers to nuns. There's everything that you could imagine for having to have a high IQ, and you just expressed it in different ways. You know, so that's kind of cool.
That's a great way of putting it. That's the new billboard for the brothel. We express it in different ways.
Exactly. Another thing I'll mention, by the way, is that Mind Games next year is in Columbus.
Yes.
It's just down the road. And so I don't know that we're going to do a podcast from there, but we can absolutely do dispatches from the field in terms of what games are we trying and what do we think.
Yes,
you know,
that would be awesome.
I don't know. I don't think there's any confidentiality required, but I know that I don't want to be so involved in doing those that I'm not playing the game.
Right.
The point to be there is to play your 30 to 60. You know what I mean?
I didn't even think about that. We could do a quick 2-minute update where we just like in the hallway hold the camera. So here's what I played. I love this. I did, and then it's done recorded, and then afterwards we compile them into.
Honestly, I think that'd be really cool. And you know, Mind Games usually has maybe 300, going up to now 350 nowadays. It's a bigger and bigger event, but that's out of 50,000 Mensons. And so there's probably any number of people that can't make it to this thing that would still be interested in what that content is. And then, you know, for then, which is April, but like when people start looking at people's birthdays, and of course for Christmas, what were the big winners and what other things were, you know, I don't know. I have a whole philosophy about how I do this event that I really keep track of. You know, there's multiple factors that the games are judged by, but I care the most about, for instance, replayability. I tend to not like a game that I did it once and then you're kind of done with it. I want to get my money's worth. And I like where they set the game up to be like that. And not only replayable because you keep adding extensions, but just replayable in the game's essence. You know what I mean? That there's enough changeability and luck and whatever else might be. So I'd love to do that. There's little 2-minute blips, you know, dispatches from out in the hallway. Don't disrupt all the gamers and stuff like that. But let's look towards doing that. That's a very cool idea for next year.
Yeah, because I was talking to the last RG I went to, the one guy there down in Dayton. He's helping run it up in Columbus.
Right. James Nelly, exactly.
Yes. And so he said you get a day free or something like that if you help out for a couple hours or whatever. I'm like, I'm in. You know, I'm 2 hours away. I could drive down easily on a Wednesday. And you know,
and he asked me to be one of the, not a co-chair or anything like that. He really is that, but like one of the day chairs that keeps track of, okay, besides playing the games, are the games getting put back where they should go? Is hospitality getting filled? You know what I mean? Just the people that smooth things out so that 349 people can concentrate on this cool thing, and that you just step outside of that and be an administrator and a caretaker once in a while. So I'm going to help them out with that. You know, it's nice. I think have we talked about this? You know, my philosophy about volunteering, Mensa and otherwise, nowadays is pretty much not the cause. It's who do I want to contribute to the success of? Because there's all kinds of people that are really good at seeing a parade and getting in front of it, but they're not the best person for that job. They just want it.
Yeah.
And I've gotten tired of that. I've gotten tired of all the abuses and mistakes that go with someone wants to be the decider, even if they don't have anywhere near the temperament or the, even in Mensa, the intellectual capacity to handle a multivariable problem in a way that the most people are going to be satisfied, instead of, I made a decision and I'm going to bullet through. Because Mensa's had its share of asshole, dictator, et cetera, et cetera. I really tend to be like that it's who I collaborate with that matters more than just the sheer mind games is a good idea. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and I'm happy to be a participant, but it's the next step up is to be someone who's making the event run well. You know what I mean? So for the annual gathering, I did publicity, and I'm good at it. You know what I mean? I'm good at gathering a whole bunch of information and expressing it in a persuasive, hey, come on and have a fun time with us, that kind of thing. And mostly got good feedback. And then once in a while, it's like, bear with me, I'll toot my own horn. It's the people who are determined to be nasty. I'm also verbally agile enough to like kind of not let them get away with it. You know what I mean? That I'm not there to be bullied. I'm not there to let any other volunteer be shat upon. And so it's important to be able to say, I understand your opinion and I'll give it the appropriate attention, which it might be nothing. And you know what I mean? Or like, wow, you were very persuasive, except in your initial premise, you were wrong. And so everything else falls apart.
Right.
Et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? And I never want that stuff to be contentious, but most of the time, if you're witty enough, it's not contentious between you and that person. It's that everybody watching on the sideline is going, wow, this guy's really a jerk. And Al's handling that pretty well for how much it could have gotten even jerkier. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, oh well.
Yeah. So that's our plan. We got some up, and Chicago. As of right now, I want to go to Chicago.
We will be in Chicago.
Go ask them about doing a talk, maybe two, even. Depending on what goes. We'll see.
I probably will repurpose my comic book talk for there, and then just that. If we want to do a live podcast from there, that would be great.
Yeah.
As usual, I'm hosting Pretentious Drinking. Have we talked about that on the podcast before? Maybe
briefly mentioned. Maybe.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. This is so much like, hey, let's, what do you and I have in the pipeline, as if we're sitting, next, what's your next movie there, Bill? Pretentious Drinking is a really cool event. It's 25 years plus old now, where we sample different liqueurs and cordials. Good friend Gary Krivko and I, a long time ago, up in Milwaukee, and they had a tasting event, if you will, maybe half a dozen, 10 bottles. And we kind of looked at each other and said, we could do this in Chicago, like mega bigger. Chicago has a very cool institution, if you will, called the Gobs Trust. There's a guy named Burton Spain that left money to Mensa in a trust. So the good old Burton Spain Trust, Gobs. And it was particularly like, don't do it for the boring things in Mensa. There's enough other ways in which those important things are being handled, scholarships and testing and stuff like that. We want this to be the way that Mensans have fun, that they socialize. And so it helps to sponsor new events. And so we jumped into that and said, hey, we will charge $1 a shot, but we need the money up front to be able to buy it. And then as we did it better and better over the years, it stopped being that we had to go to the Gobs Trust, because it really is for new events anyway. And it just started to be part of Halloween. So, in a big room, Halloween has 500 to 600 people. Half of them show up, and honestly, I already went into too much of the administration. What matters is it's really cool to be able to try something expensive. Often these bottles are, $20, $30, $40, $60. And in a bar, it'll cost you $6 or $8 a shot, and you might hate it. So instead, everybody gets like 4 little shot cups. And so it's not like everybody just bellies up to the bar and drinks themselves into oblivion. That's not what Mensa is about.
Yeah. Though, and everyone socializes and they dress up. And
that's right. It's a big mingling event, and that's exactly right. Pinky's out, exactly. Yes. That Pinky and the brain. And actually, I think I initiated the Mensa toast, which is brain cells to spare. Boom. So Gary he moved to St. Louis and stopped being as involved as much. So Colleen stepped up to do it with me. So we have like 24 16 to 24 pourmeisters, depending on how much room we have. And so they man the tables, and they have sections. And Colleen and I go shopping, and we have all the leftovers from the previous year, because liqueurs don't go bad in a year. Certain things do, like cream liqueurs. You can have a bottle and you can turn it over, and now it's cheese. And so you can't really save that bad boy
not
up.
very prestigious.
That's
Yeah.
not very pretentious, exactly. But otherwise, everybody gets to try all kinds of things. Some people, they come in and they've tried things before and they're like, it's been a long time since I had a shot of amaretto, a shot of Benedictine and brandy, my particular favorite. But we go searching every year for what's the cool new thing. Anything that you can distill's not the right word. Anything you can ferment can be made into a liqueur. So we've had caraway seed liqueur, and I'm going to name some of the worst. The Kümmel, the caraway seed liqueur. Oh my God, it was terrible. Artichoke liqueur. It's called Cynar. It's like, that's close enough to cyanide to be like what it's like. And we had snake wine one year that somebody brought from either Thailand or Laos, that they actually kind of like brought out a plane, and they weren't sure that it'd be allowed and stuff like that. But like you have in various different mezcal or things, that there's like a little worm or a little beetle in the bottom, this had a snake in the jar. Wow. In the bottle, I should say. And it tasted nasty, but it wasn't horrible until enough of the liquid was drunk down that the snake was out in the air. And then it's a rotten snake. It's a snake that got and every year there are people that like belly up to the tables and say, so give me some of your best and some of your worst. And it's like, well, best might be a matter of your personal taste, but I know what this year's worst is. Step down over here.
Yeah.
Where
that right there is what we were just talking about earlier. My cousin will say, I don't want that. That looks horrible. I don't want that, but a typical trait of a Menson high IQ is, well, let's try what's bad. Let's try. And you want the experience. You want to see, you want to compare. Why is it bad? Exactly. All the time, with food, everything. I'm like that. Yeah, I'll give it a try. It looks horrible, but yeah, I'll give it a try.
Yeah. And also my palate tends to be towards the sweet. You know what I mean? I really like all the different fruit and berry brandies and stuff like that, where people really like the bitter. Yeah. And so you're going to get Unicum from, and another thing we try to do is, it's not only the United States, there's things from all over the world that are almost like the traditional liqueur from that country. So you want to get, what's the Hungarian one? What's the Irish one? What's the, all over the place, you know what I mean? And there's enough good liquor stores in the Chicagoland area that we've been able to find all different kinds of things like that. One place we go to called Binny's, so shout out to Binny's. Binny's Beverage Depot has just an amazingly good selection. Instead of a little section like other places have, they have a whole aisle, and we kind of work our way down and say, what haven't we tried before? What things have poured through in previous years, so we should get a replacement because more people will want to try it. You know how this works. I have a master spreadsheet that's now, like I said, 25 years old, that I've got really good data on what worked and what didn't, and what things I sometimes lately I've actually bought 2 of certain things, because as you might imagine, Mensons have like the public, you're going to love something that tastes like mead with a kick. It's honey wine. It's just so perfect. Anything involving chocolate, anything involving, and I pretentious. The reason that it's that is it isn't any of the flavored rums, flavored vodkas, flavor, all that kind of stuff. I don't want something to taste like cotton candy. It really is a liqueur or a cordial, where it's something that's kind of been distilled down to its essence. And so when it tastes of elderflower, it really is, wow, I didn't know what elderflower is going to taste like, but how interesting and complex this is. You know what I mean? And so we have sections, like people who man the various different tables. Here's the cream liqueurs, here's the chocolates, here's the things that are best served on ice, here's the nuts, here's the vegetables, you know what I mean? Yeah. Any vegetable can be distilled down, you know what I mean?
So broccoli and cauliflower.
Exactly. And there really are people that are like, and I'll have, drink your veggies, I'll have little signs up that extol the virtues of what you're getting into there. And for 2 hours, it's just such bonhomie. It's such conviviality. Everybody's having a good time, but we're watching our friends. If anything, another reason that I love sponsoring this event is I'm not a big drinker. I drink at this event and on New Year's Eve. I really don't like that people get drunk and then get in their 2,000-pound weapon and drive it home. It's terrible how much that's still a part of our society.
Even with Uber and Lyft and all that.
That's right. So this is, everybody's in the hotel together. Even if you get a little goofy because it's not only that pretentious drinking has alcohol, there's free flowing beer and wine throughout the entire gathering. So sometimes people have been nipping away at their beers and then they show up at our event. And so sometimes people have had to be like, okay, let's take you back to your room and make sure that you're not going to Bon Scott yourself. You know what I mean?
Right.
your position so you won't drown in your own vomit. But we haven't had any
Yeah,
incidents of someone really got stupid, really got, 9 sheets to the wind, et cetera, et cetera. We
right.
have had people that were put to bed come back to visit again in their bathrobe. So you know what I mean?
Well, but how do you know? Because sometimes people walk around in their bathrobe and slippers all weekend anyway.
And there is some
So-
of that too. That's true. We do have people that have the big puppy slippers and stuff like that. So far as I know, there hasn't yet been a pretentious drinking baby.
Oh, well,
You know what I mean? We
should
lowered
check the
inhibitions
statistics
enough,
for
but
9 months later, 10
see,
months
that's what I'm
later.
saying. If it really was July, right? You know what I mean? October plus 9 months. But I haven't heard anybody that directly attributed to that. Though some couples have become couples because they discovered that they both like the same things or like the same, that they did lower their inhibitions enough to talk at a better level than, hey baby, how you doing?
And that's, that's a whole topic right there, because one of the traits you see quite often is there is some shyness and reticence, with other groups. You get the people that know each other a lot. Not so much. I mean, a lot of times, like the game room, anyone will, hey, we need someone else for a game. You want to play? And you bond over the game, then you're friends and you know them and stuff. It does get difficult for this way of thinking or whatever to find somebody in that romantic era. And
exactly.
And
so
it's
this is the same social lubricant as it is in every other bar. Or
exactly with people of like mind.
Yeah, I'll tell you, every year after the event, I field questions from people that are like, man, you had a banana liqueur that I absolutely love, but I didn't get the name of it. And because comes a master spreadsheet, most of the time I recall because I'm that guy that remembers everything. But a lot of times I'll have to be like, okay, was it this or this or this? Because we actually had 3 banana liqueurs this year. And then I was like, I'll even have a little picture. I'll say, does any of these names ring a bell? So I've been able then to do that cool thing that it really was also designed to do. Try a bottle for, instead of buying the $30 and making a terrible mistake, you find the one that you like, and then you're going to have that in your house so that when you want to have a sip of that perfection, that distilled elderberry, that
Right.
perfect maple brandy, you know what I mean? We've had all the different chocolates, the dark and the light, and it has or caramel, creme de leche, dulce de leche. It's got, I'm sure I butcher every foreign language. I try.
I butcher English, so
Exactly. But people during the course of the year, they'll actually say, hey, I was just in this interesting place in Wisconsin and I saw this thing that I haven't seen in pretentious drinking. It's like, if you buy me that bottle, I will reimburse you and we will put it out there on the tables. So I've had half a dozen different agents over the years that have, I found, and actually, if anybody in Great Britain is coming to Halloween and wants to get me a bottle of unicorn tears, from what I understand, this thing exists and I've not been able to order it. There's many places that have restrictions either into the United States or out of that country or whatever. So I'm always looking for certain like holy grail type things. Once it's in my mind, I want to be able to say I've tried everything I've ever heard of. I probably try, this is going to make me sound terrible, 10 or a dozen new things that year. 10 shots in a night. Well, I'm also 290 pounds. And so
dispersed well.
I've never been anywhere near so drunk that I couldn't, okay, everybody, event is over. Let's get all the caps back on all the bottles. Let's make sure all the bottles go into the cases, and put like with like so that we can do an inventory later on. You know what I mean? It hasn't been, okay, Al's gone, somebody else clean up after him. Right. So I'm happy about that. I really am sure, unfortunately, that binge drinking ain't good for me. And now that I'm especially aware that I am pre-diabetic, that's especially a good thing.
Yeah.
And yet it hasn't gotten me yet. And so I'm probably going to be less trying to try everything new, but I am going to have my favorite and 3 others, or you know what I mean? I kind of will be able to say, when somebody asks me, what have you tried this year that you like? I'm always happy to say, well, I didn't realize that I would like the watermelon liqueur as much as I would, but boy, it's great. And walk over here,
Anyway. And you mentioned the imports. This isn't a liqueur, but I found out that Rush, the rock band, has made their own craft beer. Like they're on their 3rd type of craft beer. And I have an author friend in Canada that has some. So we were going to have a conference in Colorado, but it got canceled because lack of participation. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll bring down some. We'll go to the pub. We'll drink some." But he was going to bring a friend of his, Michael J. Anderson, who is an author and has written Star Wars and many other books.
Read his stuff, exactly.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh yeah, he'll come along. We'll have some drinks at the pub." I'm like, "Hell yeah, oh yes, please." I'm like, God, but that got canceled.
And just like mind games, one of the reasons you do it is so you get an idea of what you want to have yourself. You know what I mean? And my mind games choices are not always on the Mensa select list. Sometimes there are things that are particular to Colleen and I like word games. And so, but we have our liquor cabinet is our piano. We have a whole bunch of different bottles on the piano.
That's better than my cousin. He has steps in his house that come down and then they split to go into the kitchen and into the living room. Well, the steps going into the kitchen used to be filled when we were all younger, and it was a common thing, and it was just everything. You couldn't walk that way.
Yeah. But I guess, that's kind of like out of 25 years, what's the greatest hits? I always have my Benedictine and brandy because I love that one. I really like Somros, which is an Indian liqueur that Corante y Tres 43 that has, I love
Not 42.
Not 42. It's one better than Life, the Universe, and everything.
Wow.
But I like things that have a certain particular taste, and I also like things that are very complex, and that while you're tasting, it's like, well, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. Benedictine and brandy is like one of those things that's got 17 herbs and spices, done by the monks to, I don't even know beforehand. It's not always predictable what things I'll really like, but like rum chata the first year that we had it, and it's kind of funny, it's rum liqueur, not just rum, but this tastes like an oatmeal cookie with a kick.
Yeah,
I like oatmeal cookies. And the ones that we not only have gotten them, we've also like brought it to Christmas that year for the family, and most people have never heard of any of the things that I bring because they're not. Rum chata is now in the public consciousness. A lot of people are aware of that, but the first time they brought it out, they were like, what the hell is this? This isn't your standard, amaretto or frangelico. There's things you always see behind the bars, right. Half a dozen 10 that bars have. And yet once they tried it, they were like, so what's the name of that again? And they pull out the phone and make sure that now they can go. And
rum chata is good in coffee if you like also, a little cream.
Exactly. And what they'll find out sometimes is like, well, where'd you get that? Well, I got it at Binny's in Chicago. Oh, that liqueur is not available like west of the Mississippi. So the people that flew in from California, they're pining until this thing gets a distributor that handles the entire United States or whatever else. Anyway, it's one of those things. I don't think it's the longest running Mensa event at an RG, but it sure is up there. I think it's 26, 27 years nowadays. It took a break when Halloween took a break. And last year, to my chagrin, I didn't do it. Colleen and I were still very worried about COVID and masking, and especially making sure that we were available to do other things like visit my parents. And so Matt Crawford substituted in and did a fine job, but I'm happy to be coming back because I had a good streak going. And it really is like, how that is? It's like, keep a streak going. Now I have a year off, so, but I love doing it. I love the shopping. I love the hosting. There I am in my kilt and my my ruffled shirt and everything like that. And just, like I said, there's such a good feeling in the room. People are just so happy to be there. It's that's another thing that really, to me, epitomizes Mensa, that if you're going to do drinking, like do something really cool, like craft beers or liqueurs and cordials, or the finest scotches or brandies or whatever else it might be, that a certain amount of knowledge helps you make better choices. You know what I mean? So anyway. So we went on too long about that.
Well, I was gonna say, so it's the 5th. Yesterday was the 4th. Fireworks everywhere. Even Akron's got canceled because of all the stuff going on in Akron right now. But it's funny you mentioned that about the fireworks and the history of that, because I was sitting there watching it last night and I'm like, man, didn't the Chinese like invent fireworks in like 1400 or something? I'm like, we have technology and
before that,
it was, I'm like, man, how did they really pack it and get it to so they're not killing themselves, blowing themselves up? And I was like, we've got this wonderful display, and they were really, I was down in Orville and they were really doing some trying to coordinate it, not just random all over. So they had these things they were shooting off, and it's like boom, 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 boom. But it was just these sparkles, and it went across back and forth. And then they were shooting bigger ones up above it. So it was a combo thing. And I'm like, man, that's all from what the Chinese did hundreds of years ago.
Exactly.
And how did they figure all that out, and the colors and all that? Of course, my brain starts analyzing. It's pretty, more than pretty.
And I guess that I am right there with you. I love the fact that they're beautiful, and that they have gotten that level of coordination and mixture and that kind of stuff. But early on, it was like, well, what makes that one red and what makes that green? What makes the flinders, the little glowing parts that come down? How do they do it so that it goes up and you can see a little spiraling tail, and then it goes dark for a moment, and then it blows up, and then there's things that whistle. So I was just curious as to, it isn't only one kind of thing. And so I'm hardly an expert, but you learn, okay, different elements make different colors, so strontium is the red. I think copper is the green. I hope I'm not saying anything, but, and the different combinations, when you do when you make a rocket and you do a thing that's going to split, it really is like, you have to time it right so that the second and third stage ignition, if you will, happens at exactly the right time, so that it really does split evenly and stuff like that. And there really is craft and science that goes into the design. When you see something like, oh, it's like a Saturn, it's got a round circle, and then it's got an oval, so it looks like the rings. It's like, so how did they exactly place the things and time it so that they'd go off at the right time? Or this is a top hat, or this one looks like Snoopy's face, or whatever. It's very cool that they have that control over something that's kind of inherently out of control. It's going to blow up at some
chaos.
point, you know what I mean?
Chaos in our little package.
Yeah. So we had a really good, sadly, whatever just happened in Highland, in Akron, like now that it's intruded on 4th of July and that kind of stuff, we're there and there's just throngs of people. There must have been 10,000 people.
Wow.
Lakewood is like 50,000 people, and 10,000 of them were at our lake park, and they're all on blankets, standing in the street, whatever else it might be. And I don't want to have in the back of my mind, what would I do if something terrible started to happen? But sadly, you have to, if you care about your life and your wife's life and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, wow, if I hear shots from that direction, then you run in the opposite direction. You get a big obstacle in between, like a house or a car. You keep moving away. Don't think that you're going to be able to take shelter. Well, I don't know. I don't know what the actual, I think what I think, and maybe that's not the actual rule book, but I'm not going to stand there and wait to be picked up. And I don't carry a gun, so I'm not going to be the supposed hero that's going to, a good guy with a gun could be
shot 5 other people.
Exactly that. All the statistics, we don't have to go into the whole gun control, and I don't even know, it's not a debate. It's obvious what it should be, is that we have a radical, crazy element in our society that has blocked sense from happening for a long time. And the penalty for that blockage has become higher and higher and higher over these last 20 years. And there will never be enough terrible bodies stacked up from children, from people at a concert, from people at an Independence Day parade, that finally they're going to say, oh, you're right. We were wrong all along. We really should have some control over this. My terrible dark humor quip is always, are we going to die from like reading comprehension? It's not just the right to own arms. It's in order to have a well-regulated militia. So the word regulation is built right into it. And the fact that it's militia, that it's supposed to be for the defense of the country, not so you can overthrow the tyrant that you think the United States is going to become, but then you are terrorizing everyone else and you're getting weapons into the hands of crazies. And even the most reasonable things that we did put in place for a while, they've all been systematically removed. That it's not a concealed carry permit, it's not getting mental testing done, it's not getting training done before you know how to use it, that it's just, we want to go back to the Wild West where the most vicious guy with a gun somehow is in charge. And I just can't stand that. That's our posture as a society. So what are we going to do? We're going to get all the bad guys out and put all the right guys in and finally pass these laws, and then we're going to do a concerted effort to get people to trade their guns in for money, get people to get guns out of the hands of the worst of the already offenders or potential offenders,
Right.
what are we going to do so that it isn't that every parade and every church and every school and every movie theater, and like, you can't name a place that hasn't been ravaged by this now.
And you mentioned that, and I was the same way last night because we're sitting there on the blanket waiting. There's a lot of people in the football field or soccer field and stuff. And we were looking at the dogs and stuff. And it's like, wow, there's like a whole lot of German Shepherds. Oh, they're all gathering in groups. I'm like, oh shit, what the, is this about something to go down? But it was just people that had German Shepherds. They started talking, hey, I like your dog, but your brain jumps anymore. And that's not the way to live.
And as I survey the crowd, I want to like, hey, everybody, I'm happy to be your friend. I don't want to be going, is that the guy? Is he dressed with the wrong jacket that would conceal a bunch of magazines? Is he like looking around in a way that he's not looking up at the sky? He's looking for like a place to shoot from. I can't stand that we have that element in our society and that we haven't done something to curb it. You know what I mean? It's just, it's the toll that it's taking and the weight that it's putting on everyone to worry about that. And the Onion, as you know, famously has a headline that they've repeated, unfortunately, like 27 times now. Nothing could have been done.
Right.
Says the country where this is the only place it happens on a repeated basis.
Yes.
I wish I could quote it directly because they put it perfectly pithy, but like in every other place that they've done, New Zealand, all in Europe, everywhere you've read about how they had a terrible, tragic incident, and then they did the right thing and they regulated it and they made sure that it's still in the hands of law enforcement, that it's still useful for sports hunting and all the right, if you will, purposes that it can be put towards, but all of the, not just Saturday night specials anymore. Now it really is assault rifles.
Yeah.
And it's like, and
it's so many, how many memes are going around with that? That's like, oh, we can't do anything about this, but we're going to regulate this and control this. Well, wait a second. How, that's the same thing.
That's boy, is that a perfect thing to say, that when you have a discussion, when you have a debate or an argument, there's rules to how you can persuade people because you bring facts and you follow logically to the conclusions of those facts. And you don't keep throwing out sophistry and false arguments that sound good, but they're wrong. They're wrong as you say them. And I can't think of how many topics do we have nowadays where people use the same repeated hack crap argument, but that's their trump card. That's where they say, if I say this, that I win the argument.
Right.
But
well, still, like with COVID
magazine size, I don't want to debate about what's an AR-15 or not. Like the fact that they immediately go to all the tactics that don't move towards shared understanding and what can we do together, that it's all contentious and meant to fragment the discussion and get no progress.
I've still heard with COVID, people say, oh, you're one of those sheep. I don't wear a mask because I like to breathe. Really, people have been wearing masks for 2 years. I haven't heard one person dying because they have the mask on. And that's still your argument?
The doctor that's going to save you in case you do get it, he wears a mask every day.
All day in surgery.
Why are you such a liar? Why are you lying to yourself?
But that's the
thing to lie along.
Honestly, Al, I really think they honestly believe it because they can't fathom that what they want isn't the best thing, and they will believe whatever supports that. They could take a lie detector test. You could not detect that they're lying. They don't even think they're lying. They think you're so wrong. They think you're so stupid that you don't understand how wrong you are because they are right. How do you argue that?
You're right. I think you're right. But what comes with, we have all kinds of people that go to the commandments about why we should be doing various different things, go to the Bible. And funny, I don't think there's any prohibition against slavery or abortion or various other hot button issues, but there sure is a prohibition about bearing false witness. And that's not only lying, that's not trying to get to the truth. You commit as a society to like seeking the truth together. You know what I mean? That's the Enlightenment. That's civilization. And Enlightenment is a bad thing to say because it was kind of opposed to the church at the time. But way back then, the reason that we started to have laws and tribunals and so forth it wasn't, can I bribe this guy so I get my way? No, it's that we're going to catch the criminal, look at the clues, find the guy that's been taking the bribes, whatever. It's the seeking of truth. And someone that stops at whatever they think they believe, that they don't try to get rigorous about how you pursue the truth, that they don't try to say, gosh, there are experts in this. It isn't what I happen to see in a YouTube video. I should seek out the experts. I should myself become an expert, but that requires my becoming less passionate about what I already believe and more open to, I might be dead fucking wrong.
But that's
See that.
again,
you know,
that it makes total sense, and it's the truth and all that, but they don't even think that way. You know, that again,
Right.
well, this is what I believe, and that's exactly what's true, and everybody else is wrong, and nothing will change that, and you can't tell me anything because you're a conspiracy, you're lying, you're against this, you're controlled, you know, I
Right.
have all these beliefs that are just not reality, but it's delusional. I for a totally different situation, which I'm not going to go into, but I used to bring up the argument. I'm like, but if I was in an insane asylum and there was a guy in the corner with his hand in his jacket going, I am Napoleon Bonaparte, how do you argue with him that he's not? You can't. That's why he's in there.
Right.
But that's what we've got here with all these other people with all their beliefs. It's the same thing. They all think they're Napoleon. There's no way you'll convince them separately, differently.
And so what do we as a society have to do?
Move
Put
to
them in the-
Canada.
Exactly. No, it's put them in the loony bin. You know what I mean? If we have to have enough separation between the loonies and their ability to impact society, if we need to outvote the loonies so that the right laws get passed, so that there's enough, even loonies won't touch the hot stove. If you keep giving them an incentive or a disincentive for continuing the way that they are, you know what I mean? By acting like Napoleon, they get put to where their freedom is restricted. They don't get to sit on the street corner and preach that. They get to go where you take your pills at 9 and 5 every day or whatever else.
Right.
And the fact that we have elements in our society that are actively fighting, shutting down some of the worst memes, some of the worst ideas that persuade people to dig in their heels and be wrong, but unshakably wrong. Society has the need to protect itself. You know what I mean? To stop those things from being as prevalent. And we've slid away from that because we sure have allowed all kinds of bad ideas. Every time that you hear about the election getting stolen, absolutely untrue. And you know that anybody that says that might be unshakable, but I have this is a variation on, don't attribute to malice what can be explained by stupidity. I think that don't attribute to insanity, to unshakability. I think that sometimes there's other forces, there's other rewards that they get from wearing their silly red hat and saying things like our entire election system, tuned as it has been by 200 years of having to prove the results, that because one clown says false results, bad election, throw it all out, we have to say, no, come over to the side where you can examine it just like we can. You can prove to yourself that this is right. And eventually when that clown goes to jail, when he's in prison because he really did lie and incite and do all the wrong things, it really might be that someone's going to say, I put a lot of confidence in a guy that's been proven to be not only wrong, but maliciously wrong.
That seems so right.
Evil.
That seems so right and logical, but what you're actually getting is, oh, see, they're still railroading things. They're still controlling it. And I had people say, yeah, Obama's paying those people to say those things about Trump. Yeah. What?
So the crazies will eventually run out of a forum. You know what I mean? The fact that we have the Boberts and the Greens and whoever else, Palin making a comeback, like the society has a need to stop putting a microphone in front of them.
Yeah.
The fact that, like, I don't know, after I heard some people speak twice, I knew I'm never hearing anything sensible out of their mouths. You know, the fact that they're so willing to jump to the microphone at every tragedy, it's like, why are we still allowing that? That's not news. You know what I mean? Maybe right. Fox News is going to have it and they have a certain cachet in society, but all the other news places should not only be spending time telling the real news, but continually pointing out, as places have, here's the 20,000 lies that Fox News has told, that Donald Trump has told, that, you know, that we can provably, they keep on spouting bad things, then finding out that they're wrong, provably, and then still continuing to say it. now it's not just they were mistaken. Now they're actually liars. And then,
Right.
and this is, this is happening. All the things we've been having going on with January 6th, those hearings, I see continually people getting on TV and talking about what's wrong with all that. I don't see them stepping up and under oath saying that. And that is a huge telling thing, because
Yes.
then the crime is perjury. They lied knowingly,
Well,
willingly.
some of them are ignoring the subpoenas and they're not coming in. And that's what we had. What Thursday is, there were a couple aides that stepped forth and said some things like, these are the emails, these are the conversations. And this is what I was told. I wasn't following it all at the time, but that they had convened, taken a break for the holiday and that, and they said, everybody needs to come back right now. And it was that big of revelations. So,
Well, ever since, it's kind of funny. The first time that we had those hearings, and I think Karl Rove was the first one that in memory I can remember saying, I'm not coming, and he got away with it. Instead of that guy being manacled and monkey walked into the court and said, you're not above the law. You will indeed answer these questions because you're the one that has a lot of information that we need to get to the truth. And even if you're not yourself committed to it, we are.
Yeah.
And so now the fact that they can just say, I don't think I'm going to make an appearance. I kind of can't believe that there aren't half a dozen Secret Service guys or Department of Justice, wherever the appropriate, who is it? The chaplain's office, you know what I mean? Whatever the court people are that go and get those people and say, you were served a summons. That's not a maybe I'll make it. That's a court order. You got to be there.
Right.
So how we keep, and it's not only that they get away with it, it's that then you've created that precedent of other people think they can get away with it too. And only why people don't start saying, the fact he doesn't want to appear in court, guilty.
Well, that's again going back to the
testify under oath, and that's why he's not showing up.
But going back to the loonies, that's not their response. Their response is, well, of course, because they're just going to twist his words. He knows the truth. Why should he go and appear? That's their logic to it. Again, how do you argue with thinking like that? That they support it.
Saying the way courts work is this, that everybody has the right to face their accusers and you have the right for cross-examination. You will get to the truth, instead of the guy that just gets to stand in front of a sea of microphones and say whatever he wants. And then you hope that the correction will be in the newspaper, that some other commentator in an op-ed piece, you know what I mean? Like that if we're looking for a vehicle for finding out the truth, the courts with this antagonistic system is really good at getting to that. They, whatever they've made, maybe some mistakes, 99% of the time they did exactly as they should have, which was everyone had a chance to present their facts, and in protecting that the right to face your accusers and that all the other things we put that were in direct response to bad courts in England, you know what I mean, that you can't be held for an unnecessarily long time, that you anyway, and honestly, Colleen and I, when we were in Boston and seeing a copy of the Magna Carta, what was one of the things that was in there? A man has the right to face his accusers. This isn't a new, trumped up thing that we came up with in the United States. This is from 1210, was it? With, King John being brought to heel by his barons about how it used to be. I can send the army in and they'll tell you what's true. Might makes right. No.
That's what someone tried recently.
Like that. So I all the erosion of trusted institutions, whether it's the courts or our monitoring and regulatory things, all that is a way of saying the truth doesn't matter. That I want to be able to get away with things that before we had a way of curbing you. And it can't be that your lie is so persuasive, that your money is so pervasive. It has to be that we maintain these institutions. And so I don't know, as a geek, how do we keep putting that method forward? I share often things like, so here's the Ad Fontes' media chart that talks about which are the sources for news that are the least biased and the least political, you know what I mean? And if you want to find something out, if you want to get to the truth, go here to the top of the pyramid where the BBC, Christian Science Monitor, I'm trying to think what's the least biased and the most authoritative. They cite facts, etc. And if you want to be in on the stupid bamboozle, then go to InfoWars over
Right.
here. Or
I've
go to, you know
seen
what I
this.
mean? Like there's known places that whenever anybody cites Fox News, it's like you've already lost the argument. So far as I'm concerned, you know, as I do, that not only is Fox a propaganda machine, that people that listen to Fox are less informed than if they didn't read anything, than if they listened to nothing. And so, you know, you can't cite the crappiest news source available as your authoritative source. It's not, and it's provably not, and it's statistically not.
Right.
And so, I don't know, whatever I used to talk about with, let's get to the facts of this, when people reject that approach, then it's like, then let's talk about you because you're the problem. It's like, oh no, it's ad hominem. It's not ad hominem if the problem is you.
Yes.
You know, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to attack you, oh, because you're bald and therefore you're a bad guy. No, it's that you refuse to use facts in discussion about facts. That's the problem in this situation.
You turn what you believe into a fact.
Like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and that's, when's the first time that you heard that? What, you know, false facts or whatever, false news, fake news. Like immediately, the
president-
entire press corps should have said, "You're wrong. You don't get to decide that. We report on you because you're so overflowing with feces that there has to be this estate that makes sure that you can't just get up and say whatever you want and act as if this is the truth.
Right.
You're the fake news." And yet we haven't had enough crusaders because, hey, if you speak up, then you get thrown out of the press room and all you have is the propagandists left. And yet there is no way to do that nowadays without enough documentation being available in every video. And, you know, like there's ways to judge the veracity of who said what when. I am a fan of Snopes for a long time, and not because, hey, I like urban legends. It's because the rigor that they approach things, and when they occasionally got something wrong, that they printed a retraction. And same with Wikipedia in some ways, that there are self-correcting things in place.
Right.
And almost everybody that I've seen attack those particular institutions, they're full of shit. That they want it to be that there's no fact finding, that there's no fact checkers, that they could just say whatever they want and get away with it. Instead of being, wow, what you're talking about with such vigor never happened, and provably so. And yet you've repeated it 3 times now, and you've been told twice, provably, that it never happened. So it isn't about the situation; it's about you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you telling me what a liberal bastion, like, wow, I don't know that that's an insult. I don't know that that's a way of disqualifying. Like, what they do is still fact-based and provably much more than Alex Jones just babbling. Rush Limbaugh being so facile with the language in how he lied. You know what I mean? Whatever level of hell he's currently broasting at, he damaged the world in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And I'm, as Mark Twain said, you know, I didn't wish for his death, but I sent a nice letter saying I approved.
Well, just to sum up how crazy things have gotten, Howard Stern wants to run for president. I mean, we get one of the most outrageous shock jocks ever,
Exactly.
and he wants to run for president. And the thing is, like, it seems normal. So, okay, great.
He's not the only one. You know, Dr. Oz is running in Pennsylvania, right?
Yes.
And like,
But that actually, when you think about it, that's actually what it should be, not career politicians. People who, now, I don't know if Howard Stern's motivations are more pure,
Right.
but people that, are, back in the day, they were farmers. The people liked them. They listened to them. They went into government. They became a senator, got sent to Washington, and came back after 4 years and resumed farming. Now we've got people, I'm 21. I'm going to be president by the time I'm 50, 60. So my whole career
that's their
is
plan their
politics.
entire life. Exactly.
Yeah, that's not what it was supposed to be.
Yeah. If in doing that, they learn how the system works and honor it, I have no problems with being the word politician means a man of the polis, a man of the city, someone who's an expert in how those things work. If you've been a mayor and a governor and like a person that had to deal with what is it like to gather facts and make a decision? What is it like to compromise with multiple factions? What's it like to have a budget and spend money wisely? All those things are good ideas for growing into the various different roles.
But you don't get that.
People that instead are like, hey, I used to be a celebrity on TV. Hey, I used to be a professional wrestler. You know what I mean? And even if they have a certain amount on the ball, what they've done with their life hasn't prepared them for the rigors of the job. you don't hire a guy in to be CEO. You kind of let himself work his way up through the organization, testing himself
You
and
hope.
being tested and proving that he can handle it.
Right.
And yet about the presidency, about the state senator, we're not going to follow that same level of rigor. So I don't know, right? This is kind of a sad thing to say. I don't, we have doctors that are scientists that really follow climate change, follow medical science, et cetera, and we hear them speak. And then we have a bunch of charlatan people like the Pauls and the Oz's of the world that still get to use the word doctor in their title. And yet they've not been practicing and rigorous and keeping current and scientific about how they've done their doctoring.
Right.
I'm amazed that they made it through med school, because I thought it was a pretty rigorous program that would weed out people that didn't have this commitment and this amount of smarts and all that kind of stuff. So wow, I am baffled a little bit by how you can really be a medical doctor and yet be irrational in so many other ways. I wouldn't have thought that, like anatomy, biology, all those things are not, hey, there's a demon in you and I have to drive it out. There's a bacteria, a microbe, a virus, and we know what drugs work against them. And you don't jump to wishful supernatural thinking.
Right.
You pursue medical science, or so I thought and hoped.
Yeah.
Oh well.
All right. Hey, before we go, because we're going long, you mentioned the new Doc Holliday series. I haven't watched it, so we'll make that a recommendation this week. Tell me quickly about why I want to watch this.
I'm sorry, it's not a watch, it's a read.
A read. Okay, so book
read,
series.
exactly. It's by M.M. Crumley, who is a pseudonym for a lady author out of Colorado, and I don't know that it gave her real name. They just said it was a pseudonym. They're a little bit, one step maybe more than teen fiction. The overall premise is Doc Holliday is made immortal, the Doc Holliday who we all know from the OK Corral shootout, Wyatt Earp, et cetera. And of course, she's a bit of a rogue, and what does he love doing? Gambling, womanizing, drinking whiskey, as well as kind of being a force for good, because he always was on the right side of the law, even while he was dissolute in those other ways. And so it's just kind of, someone had a good idea, and Doc Holliday is, quotes, in the public domain. So they have a hero, kind of like Sherlock Holmes. You can do anything you want with Sherlock nowadays, because they're also, not under copyright. And they're well written and they're amusing, but they lacked enough gravity. There were things where the supporting characters are interesting, but not enough backstory yet. How things, the conclusion of the first book seemed rushed. And so it's like, well, it's a 12-book series so far. I bought that, and I also bought another book called The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind.
That's funny.
The blurb and the premise sound interesting. If you really were a telekinetic, what would you do with it? What would the government want to do with you, et cetera, et cetera. And so I bought the first of each of those so I could give it a try and see if I wanted to continue. Right now, I'm not sure about the holidays, especially if I could get them all at $3 a pop. But I think if they're one of those things, they're new enough that there's no good used price.
Right.
And I know we're about to conclude, but let me just say that the hazards of buying used books through Amazon are now terrible. I've gotten so many things that were listed as like new that were instead used as a doorstop, dog chewed on, and whatever the hell happened. And so now I've commented on that, and multiple people said, well, you should try Ava Books. You should try A Libris. There's multiple other sources for good used material that's more curated, better bookstores. It's not just someone hit the library used sale and then resold it. You know what I mean? And especially my explanation for why it might have been that this reputation has been sundered is because the pandemic hit, people weren't coming into those bookstores. They had to sell something. So they just kind of bumped the grades up a little bit. But I don't want to buy something for $2 off that it should be $20 off,
right?
Because it's such poor condition, and I'm a collector.
Which is funny you say that, because I just ordered, now these were nonfiction instead of fiction, and that is a little different in how they're treated sometimes, but these were books on game design. 2 different books I found that had some great things. I checked them out of the library, loved them, ordered them, and I ordered used. Because one of them was a textbook, so the price was like $185 new.
Wow, see,
so I ordered used. I was good with that. A little worn, doggone, it's fine. It's the info inside. Both
That's
of them
right.
came, they were brand new. I mean, not cracked, no bent paint, nothing. They were brand spanking new. So I
Good
was
for
like,
you.
great, I got off lucky. And you mentioned that, and I'm like, huh, well, I didn't have it, but
See, good
fiction's
for you.
different.
Exactly. And honestly, for most of the things, if I just wanted a reading copy, I'd be okay with, buying something in poor, fair,
Right.
reasonable condition for a couple bucks. But I'm a collector, and when I see like new, I really want it to be, a slight nick, but I saved a couple of bucks. And instead, there's just been this huge stark contrast, and it worked so well for the first 18 out of 20 years. And over the last couple of years, it's just collapsed. I can't trust it anymore. Even
Right.
when I seek out, like, they not only have a reasonable price and like new, they've got 30,000 satisfied customers. Well, apparently they just said, we got to let our reputation go to hell because we got to sell something. And in many cases, it's been, I said, well, this wasn't like new. And then they gave me a refund. Either I sent it back, or they actually said, hey, just hold on to the book. We don't need it back. So they kind of know that they're scamming a little bit. But in other cases, it's been tough. We're a small concern, and you know what I mean? Amazon will resolve it. I then have to raise it to Amazon. And I
Right.
know this is a terrible thing to say, but I want this to be easy. I don't want it to be that I bought this book and I saved a couple of bucks. My time is worth more than the $2 that I saved. And now I'm having to go through 3 forms and 4 letters to get my money back.
And that's what they probably somewhat
you know,
rely on, the hassle of getting the
I think
refund.
so.
So
That's exactly right.
for $3,
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I don't think that I'm cheap. It just has been such an obvious change from how I used to be able to buy with confidence. It's like, you don't buy a crossword puzzle book and find out that half of it is filled in. You don't buy a book that you want to have like on the shelf looking nice, and then these two look nice, and this one is just torn up. Like, I wouldn't have bought this if I saw it in the bookstore at
Right.
any price. I wouldn't have bought
Right.
this because condition matters enough to me.
You know what's even worse? If you get a crossword puzzle book that's half done, it's if they're incorrect. If that's the reason they're half done, is because you put the
That's
wrong
right.
words in, and it's in pen.
I've occasionally done that. On an airplane, they used to have a magazine and they'd have a puzzle in it. And I can't tell you how many times I got there. It's like, I'm spending all my time correcting things in this puzzle. Their vocabulary sucked. They didn't have any oh well, you're exactly right. That's even more irritating.
Yeah. All right. We went wild today. That's good. That's fine.
Indeed. Okay.
So are you going back to California anytime soon?
As a matter of fact,
This week. That's right.
actually,
For the
I have my
conservatorship
thing, and so it's and a shorter visit this time, but it's because they had a COVID outbreak in the facility. I've only been able to visit with my mom this last time outside and masked and everything, making sure that I'm safe, they're safe, and that the people that were there sick are indeed quarantined. I just sent an email to them saying, okay, I'm coming back Thursday. I'm hoping that we can meet besides outside, because mom is more comfortable inside. She doesn't like getting too hot or too cold, et cetera, et cetera. And then we'll see what has to happen in August, September. The big thing is that hopefully with the conservatorship here and going the right way, we will then have the responsibility for her, and we can really take care of her and keep her solvent and keep, you know what I mean? It's right now there's been that the law is designed to still treat people as individuals, even though they were married for 60 years. And we had to make sure that we could act as dad, since she's the survivor instead of my father, which was not everybody's expectation, as sad as it is to say it that way. So we now will be in a much better position to be responsible and make sure mom is
I wish you luck
for her. Exactly. Thank you.
rough week.
We'll see. Every time you go into a court, it's like, I have very little idea of what really goes on in here. A big part of this is I want to know. I want to see what happens. I want to
that's real quick. I remember the one time, small, light little mishap, but had the cops called, and I had some paperwork to fill out, and he just had me sit in the back, and I'm in the back of the cop car, which I've never been in before. And he wasn't arresting me or anything. I was just sitting there to fill out paperwork. And I'm like, so are they always like this? What do they do with this? And I'm asking all these questions. He's like, what the heck? Just fill out your paperwork and go.
Exactly. Honestly, my how I think I've lived a good life is how I've spent none time in court, in jail, in a cop car, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean?
Well,
I haven't been in that, and even under happenstance and stuff like that. The number of interactions I've been have been speeding tickets. You know what I mean? Maybe it's like that for virtually everyone. So,
but they say a good friend you can call and say, hey, I need bailed out of jail. A best friend is sitting next to you going, damn, that was a good time.
That was a good time. Exactly.
So, all right, man.
All right. Take care, Steve.
Yep,
All
have a
right.
good
You
week.
have been listening
Okay.
to the Relentless Geekery podcast. Come back next week and join Alan and Steven's conversation on geek topics of the week.